Hi, my name is Laurie Gardner. This is my group leading report for HSCO511. I held my group on Sunday, March 25th from 5 in the evening until around 6:15. There were 5 participants in the group. They were all males from ages 21 to 26. 2 of the participants were my sons, and 3 of them were their friends. I had some knowledge of everyone in the group, but not close knowledge of the 3 friends. There was no co-leader for the meeting. We spent about an hour discussing how to handle anger management. We were seated in a circle in my den. I began the meeting with a simple, "Are you here, getting here, not here?" Everyone said they were there except for one participant, and when I asked him if he felt like sharing why he wasn't there, he just shared some things that had him distracted that were coming up the week ahead, and so we just spent maybe a minute and a half talking about those things, and then I checked in with him, and he said he felt like he was less distracted and more ready to begin. As we went around and talked about anger, one of the things I used was the fuse from the videos. I had them pick how long they thought their fuse was, and in general, they all had about the same. The person with the longest fuse, everybody kind of wanted to say that that was their fuse length as well. But as we went around and talked, one of the questions I asked them was, is there something that cuts your fuse in half? And there were answers like people that are rude in traffic. One of the guys was a sales associate, and he said people who are rude to him at work. And then I asked him how they handled that. And they all began to share some different ways that they handle their anger. And one guy in particular was not super interactive in the group, but he did give a lot of nonverbals. He was shaking his head and and yeah. And so at one point I did ask him, I said, "I feel like you're connecting with what this other young man is saying. Is there something in what he said that rings true for you?" And that kind of brought him in to say more. And I felt like that was kind of a linking too, because it showed some commonality for both of them. And it was interesting because one of the questions I asked them too was, did they feel like they inherited their anger? Was that what was modeled for them growing up? Did their parents have long fuses or short fuses? And that was where a lot of the guys really connected. They talked a lot about their dads. One guy talked about his mom. And it was interesting because they said they felt like they didn't know, that other people had those issues in their home. I felt like everybody took it pretty seriously, and the engagement was there for the group. I personally tried to use eye contact more than I felt comfortable with maybe going into it, because at first it does seem rude to not look at the person who's talking, but I found it so beneficial because that's when I realized that the other young man was shaking his head, when people were talking, even though he wasn't saying much at all. I did have to use cutting off one time. One of the guys that was talking about his family started to ramble about some other issues that weren't relevant to what we were talking about, but he had said something pretty poignant in the beginning, so I just asked him, I said, "I don't want to lose this moment, these things you said, so I want to go back to that and get everybody's, input on it." And so that was good. I don't think he felt cut off necessarily. And in the beginning, I did tell them, that we had some rules, just laid down 3 easy ground rules. They actually come from a TheraPlay group, which is no hurts, stick together, and have fun. So we're going to try to enjoy our time together. We're going to stick together by respecting each other and respecting each other's times. We're not going to say things that are degrading to each other about things that we feel. And so those were, and no hurts, that kind of encompasses all the rules. And we talked about confidentiality too, how that's a way to stick together, is to not share things outside the group that people have shared in confidence. I feel like, for my self-assessment, I feel like that I did a good job of keeping people engaged during the group. The one time I had to cut somebody off, I felt like that was not a skill I've had to use before, so I was glad that I got to do that. Felt like I used some linking, rounds. We didn't have time for things like dyads, but I think the main challenge that I had in the group was being objective with my sons there. and drawing them in, even though I knew it was going to be hard for them to share things, especially when we started talking about family. One of the things that I wasn't sure about is I was tempted to wing it because I've led a group like this before, but I remember in the videos and in the reading, in the Jacob's reading text, that they said you can't prepare enough. Like one of the biggest mistakes is to not prepare. And honestly, I was so glad that I over-prepared. I had a ton of questions and prompts and ideas, and I had a timeline of how the group was supposed to go, and I went over it several times. And so that I didn't really need to go to those prompts because the group stayed engaged the whole time, but I was so glad I did because I think it really bolstered my confidence as a leader. So that was good, and I definitely think I would do that again every time I have a group, that I would prepare lots of prompts and things that I could ask in case there was a lull. I was a little poor on time management. We went over by about 15 minutes. When the guys were really engaged, I probably could have cut that down a little bit with the cutting off. If there had been another group coming, or if this had been a more formal setting, I know that I would have had to be more aware of the time management. I would say the highlights of the group was hearing as the guys were leaving the house, and saying goodbye to each other and to me. They were talking about some things they talked about in the group as they were walking out, and that let me know that they took it seriously and they were really listening, and I appreciated that. I do think that probably the highlight, the takeaway for me is that I really do like doing groups. I feel like there are things that those guys said to each other that they never would have said to me, even my own kids. Because other people were sharing, I felt like they had the freedom to say some things that was really good. And I'm not sure you can get the same dynamic from one-on-one. And if you do, I feel like that relationship takes a lot longer to build. Luckily, the guys who came into my group all trusted each other on the front end because they all knew each other. So I can imagine that I saw a different dynamic than I would if I had taken 5 strangers and talked to them about this kind of thing. But I've done that before in the past too, and it just takes longer to get to the point where I was lucky enough to start my group. And so I think that some of the things I've learned that I feel like will be helpful in the group are the eye contact, which I thought I was really good at, but it is hard. It was harder than I thought to look away while someone was talking. And the other skill is the cutting off. It does seem rude, but I'm so glad that I learned a good way to do it and some phrases to say and some examples that were given in the Jacob text. So overall, I would say I had a really good experience, and I'm looking forward to doing my next group.